I helped him move in, let him borrow tools. Then one night I heard him arguing with his wife, saying, "I'll blame it on the guy next door." The next day, I got a visit from police about stolen equipment. I thought it was a mistake until I found my own hammer in the evidence bag. When Rick moved in next door, I thought I'd finally lucked out with a decent neighbor. It was a hot Tuesday in early September, one of those days where the air sticks to your skin and the ice in your drink doesn't last long. I was out front trimming the edge of my lawn, sweat running down my back, when the moving truck pulled up. He climbed out of the cab, looked around, and gave me a polite nod. "Hey," he said, wiping his forehead with the sleeve of his shirt. "Looks like we're neighbors." That's how it started. He introduced himself as Rick. No last name at first. He said he and his wife had just moved up from Baton Rouge for her job. "She's in medical billing or something like that," he said, shrugging like he barely knew. She came out a few minutes later, thin, quiet, looked like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't say anything, just gave me a forced smile and went back inside. I offered to help with the heavier boxes, and Rick didn't hesitate to take me up on it. We got to talking a bit. He said they were renting the place for a year, just seeing how it goes. I didn't push for details. I'm not the nosy type. A few days later, he knocked on my door, holding out a six-pack.
"Hey, man.
"You got a ladder I can borrow?" "Just for a couple hours. Got a patch of vent up in the attic." I handed him mine. A week later, it was a drill, then a set of Allen wrenches. He always brought them back. Nothing seemed off at first. That first month, I even started to like him. He talked about football, grilling, his old Chevy truck. He was easy to talk to. But his wife, she barely made eye contact. Sometimes I'd see her sitting in the car, staring at nothing. Sometimes pacing in the driveway on her phone late at night, whispering fast, nervous. I'd nod if I saw her. She'd flinch like I'd caught her doing something wrong. One night, probably a Friday, I remember it was just past 10. I was out on my porch having a beer when I heard them arguing. Their kitchen window must have been open. I couldn't hear every word, but it was ugly. Her voice was sharp, scared. His was louder. Then, just before he slammed the back door, I heard him say, clear as day, "If it comes to it, I'll just blame it on the guy next door." I froze. I sat there in the dark, beer in my hand, trying to make sense of it. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was part of some story. But deep down, I knew what I heard. Next morning, I was in the garage when I heard the knock. Two cops, dressed casual, but with a tone that said this wasn't a friendly visit. They asked if I could answer a few questions. Someone had reported a theft, landscaping equipment, power tools, a few expensive items taken from a job site 2 blocks over. Then they showed me something. A sealed plastic evidence bag. Inside was a hammer. Old, beat up, wooden handle chipped on the side. But I knew it right away. My initials, RC, scratched into the grip. I'd had that hammer since I was 22. Bought it when I moved into my first apartment in Austin. I told them it was mine. One of the officers raised an eyebrow and asked, "Can you show us proof of ownership? What proof do you have of something you've owned for years?" They took some notes and said they'd circle back. But I could feel it. They didn't believe me. Or maybe they weren't sure. Either way, something wasn't right. That night, I opened my shed and took inventory. Stuff I hadn't touched in weeks. My second drill, gone. Socket set, missing. One of my camping lanterns. A brand new box of deck screws. A small chainsaw I'd only used once. That's when I remembered the side gate. I'd found it open twice that week. I always keep it latched. I started writing everything down. Dates. Times. What was missing? When Rick had been around. I didn't confront him. Not yet. But I watched. 2 days later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I planted a test. I left a cheap multi-bit screwdriver on the corner shelf in my shed. I even made a note. Sunday, 3:12 p.m. By Tuesday morning, it was gone. That's when I knew. He was stealing from me, piece by piece, and using my stuff to cover his tracks. And worse, he was getting ready to pin everything on me. I didn't sleep much that week. Every sound outside made me sit up in bed. Every glance from Rick felt heavier. I stopped lending anything out, locked my shed, changed the padlock on the side gate. I even put a cheap little camera in the window facing the backyard. Nothing fancy, just motion detect. I had to know how far this would go. A few days later, I came home from work and found an envelope stuck in my screen door. No name on it. Just watch this. Inside was a cheap USB flash drive. I hesitated, but I plugged it into my old laptop, the one I don't use for much. It took a minute to load. One file. A short video clip. Grainy, handheld, obviously taken at night. It showed someone. Hard to see his face, but it was Rick's build, walking across my backyard. He had something in his hands. A box, or maybe a bag. He walked right to my shed, looked around, then slipped inside. The clip ended. I sat there for a long time just staring at the screen. Somebody had been watching him. And me. The next morning, I saw her, Rick's wife, sitting alone on the curb, smoking. She looked worse than before. Pale, tired, twitchy. I walked over, slow. She didn't look up. I said, "That video? Was it you?" She flinched, like I'd slapped her. Then she whispered, "He said you wouldn't notice. Said you were too soft." But I knew. I knew it'd fall apart. I waited, but she didn't say anything else. Just stood up and walked back inside. That same day, the police came back. More questions. This time they had a warrant. Said they were investigating a string of burglaries in the area, and some of the stolen tools had serial numbers, ones that led back to reported thefts across town. They asked if I knew anyone who might have had access to my backyard. I told them about Rick, about the borrowed tools, about the missing gear. Then I showed them the video. They didn't say much. Took the flash drive. Took more notes. Then they left. I thought that would be it. But I was wrong. The next night, someone tried to break into my house. It was just after 2 a.m. I heard a loud bang at the back door. Then the sound of something scraping at the lock. I grabbed my bat and crept down the hallway. By the time I flipped on the porch light, whoever it was had run. But there were fresh footprints in the dirt outside. Size 11. Work boots. Same as Rick's. The police came again. This time, they took it more seriously. But they still didn't arrest him. Not yet. Said they were building a case. Meanwhile, Rick acted like nothing was happening. Waved at me from his porch one morning. Asked if I'd seen the mail carrier. I nodded, said nothing. Just went back inside and double-checked every lock in my house. That's when I made a decision. I was done waiting. I started talking to the other neighbors. I'd lived on that street for almost 9 years. Knew a few folks by name, most just by face. But now, I was asking questions. Casual at first. Then more direct. Turns out, I wasn't the only one missing things. Derek across the street said his brand new hedge trimmer vanished. Thought maybe his son borrowed it, and forgot to say something. Mrs. Ellison next door mentioned a missing package. Power tools her son ordered for her. She figured it had been stolen off her porch. Piece by piece, the pattern came together. Every missing item? Same kind of stuff Rick would have an excuse to borrow. And nobody had reported it. Until now. So I pulled them together. Backyard meeting, quiet. Just 4 of us, sitting around my patio table. I showed them the video. Told them what Rick's wife had said. Told them about the police visits. The fake borrowing. Then Derek leaned in, lowered his voice. You know what's weird? Rick asked me 2 weeks ago if I'd vouch for him if anyone came asking questions. Said some people were jealous of new blood in the neighborhood. That did it. We had enough to go back to the police as a group. We gave them statements, photos, serial numbers, descriptions. They listened this time. That Friday, I came home to find 3 patrol cars outside Rick's house. He was standing in the yard, arms crossed, watching as officers went in and out with boxes. His wife stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, crying. I stayed back. Didn't say a word. Later, I learned what they found. Nearly $8,000 worth of stolen gear in the garage and shed. Some stuff still had price tags on it. But here's the twist I didn't expect. They didn't arrest Rick. Not then. Turns out, all the gear was listed under his wife's name. He'd convinced her to hold the stuff in case work picked up. She claimed she thought it was his used, borrowed, bought cheap. They couldn't prove she knew it was stolen. And Rick? He'd never put his name on anything. No receipts. No online sales. I asked the officer how that was possible. He just shrugged. Smart guy. Knew where the line was. But they were watching him now. He knew it. And things got worse for both of us. Because that weekend I woke up to find my tires slashed. All four. And on the windshield, in red marker, snitch. I didn't even call the cops that time. What were they going to do? File a report? Add it to the growing pile? Instead, I walked back into my house, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the word written across my windshield. It wasn't even the vandalism that got to me. It was the fact that he wanted me to see it. That he wanted me to feel small, afraid. And I did for a minute. But then something shifted. I printed out a copy of that photo from the video, the one of him walking into my shed. Blew it up, taped it to my garage window, facing his house. I didn't write anything on it. Didn't need to. 2 days later, I saw Rick standing in his driveway, arms crossed, just staring at it. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. That week, things got quiet. Too quiet. No cars in or out of his driveway. No lights on in the evenings. I figured they were laying low. Until Thursday night. I was watching the late news when I heard a soft knock at my front door. It was her, Rick's wife. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Eyes sunken, hands shaking. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, but I nodded. She didn't sit. Just stood there in my hallway, clutching something. A small notebook. "He keeps records," she said quietly. "I found this under the floorboard in the guest room. Every tool he's taken. Who he got it from. Dates. Names. Even you." He wrote, RC. Good for small stuff. Gullible. She handed it to me, then looked down. "I want out, but I'm scared." I didn't know what to say. I'd hated her for months. Thought she was part of it. But now, seeing her up close, I could tell. She was just as trapped. I asked, "Why are you giving me this?" She swallowed hard. "Because if I don't, he'll turn on me next. And you're the only one he's afraid of now." I took the notebook. Flipped through the pages. There it was, my initials. My hammer. My drill. My missing tools, listed like inventory at a hardware store. That night, I scanned every page. Printed copies. Dropped them off at the police station the next morning. And then I waited. It took a week. Maybe a little more. Then I saw the unmarked sedan pull up across the street. 2 plainclothes officers stepped out. Calm. Confident. Not in a hurry. One of them rang Rick's bell. The other walked around back. I stood behind my blinds and watched. Rick answered the door. He didn't even try to act surprised. He didn't shout. Didn't argue. Just nodded, stepped outside, and lit a cigarette like he'd been expecting this exact moment. They talked for a long time. No cuffs. No raised voices. I couldn't hear what they said, but when they left, they didn't take him. Just a manila folder. But later that night, I got a call. One of the officers who had interviewed me before. He told me, "We're charging him. Property theft, fraud, possession of stolen goods." It's not a slam dunk, but with the notebook and the neighborhood reports, it's enough. I thought I'd feel relief. Some sense of victory. But it didn't last. Because that weekend I found a new note. Slid under my front door. "You think this is over?" was all it said. No name. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. I showed it to the cops. They shrugged. Could be him, could be someone else. You've made enemies. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't about the tools anymore. This guy had lived in my walls, almost. Borrowed my trust, twisted it, then weaponized it. And even when he was finally caught, he still found a way to crawl back in. Every time I walk past my shed now, I still pause. Not because I think he's in there, but because for the first time in my life, I started locking it after someone took everything. Not before. Sometimes I still hear a knock and wonder if it's him, standing there with that same easy smile, asking to borrow just one more thing. And I think what gets me most is, if I hadn't heard him that night, if I hadn't walked outside when I did, I might have handed it over. No questions asked.